And tell us about your, I assume, very expensive printer.
You'll be surprised to learn that my printer is kind of a piece of crap.
Is it? Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Spill the Paint, where we ask all your favorite artists what their secrets are. Today on the podcast, we have the very famous and mysterious Scott Listfield. Welcome.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for having me on. I'm excited to stop being mysterious, I guess.
You willing to tell us all your secrets?
No, I'm willing to tell you like a small handful of secrets.
We'll take it. Let's jump right in. So tell us about your sketching process when you come up with an idea.
Mhm.
Are you a traditional sketcher on notebooks, sketchbooks, or it's all digital?
No, it's all digital for me these days, which I listening to some of the other artists you've had on, I think a lot of people I think have gone down the street. Like we all used to draw, and like a lot of us don't draw anymore, and I think we all kind of miss it to a degree. But it's slow. It's slow. Drawing is slow. I used to love drawing. I used to be much better at drawing than painting. But for me now, if I have an idea, it's just a lot easier to fire up Photoshop and start moving some photos around, rather than sketching things out and doodling. It's just a slower process. I'm not one of those artists who's good at imagining things straight out of my head without any sort of reference whatsoever. So I go digital first, even though I kind of wish that I didn't.
Do you use your own references, or do you do a lot of Google research? Like, how does that work when you work on your digital collage?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, obviously every painting I have has an astronaut in it. And people ask me sometimes like, oh, do you have an astronaut suit? I wish I did. I've tried to get one a couple times over the years, but I don't have an astronaut suit. But I have a million photos of astronauts. And I do have a helmet. So the helmet in my paintings I have, and I can rotate the helmet any which way I want to get the angle and the light that I want. So that I have. The suit I don't. As for the rest of my paintings, the rest of the backgrounds of my paintings, where the astronaut sort of goes, I often send the astronaut to these very surreal, otherworldly places, which are not things I can just walk outside and take a photograph of. When possible, I do use my own photography, but a lot of the time I'm just sort of hunting around for bits and pieces of things that are kind of the vibe I'm looking for, and then I Photoshop them and collage them together on my computer.
I was really curious about that. If you just kind of suit yourself up in your apartment or your house in Australia, just snap a bunch of selfies.
No, I wish I could, and I wish I did. I tried a number of years ago to hire somebody to make myself an astronaut suit, and it just didn't work out. It's just way too complicated. And ever since I moved to Los Angeles, which was about 6 years ago, I've been meaning to rent an astronaut suit because you can do that here. And so I was going to do it, and then over COVID, I was like, I don't know if I want to wear like a communal astronaut suit, So I kind of put it off for a while, and I've never had time, and I'm very much, as we'll get into a little further, I'm very much a creature of habit when it comes to how I make my paintings. So I'm just kind of used to it now. But one of these days, I am gonna rent an astronaut suit. And I'll probably walk around in it. But if it's going to be one of those like one size fits all deals, like it might be kind of like baggy on me. So I don't know. Then I'm like, do I have to hire a model? That's weird. I don't know. So we'll see. I gotta work that out a bit.
I mean, you're in LA. I'm pretty sure you could hire a model for an hour to walk around your studio in a suit, an astronaut suit, or any type of suit.
Yeah, I could. I'd feel a little weird doing that, but it is LA. That's not the weirdest thing that happens around here.
I feel like until maybe a couple of years ago, your process was very mysterious. We didn't see a lot of content on your social media or how the stuff was happening behind the scene. But a couple of years ago, you started posting more videos, and I saw that, and I assume this is your next step. You actually print your digital mock-ups, and I've seen some of them. They're the same size as the canvas. So do you want to tell us a little bit about that idea of how you take your sketch and you print it out as a reference?
Sure. So I don't know. I think this is one of, there's 3 or 4 core ways you can make a painting these days. And for me, I find the easiest, because I mock them up online. And so I print them out to scale exactly, I mock them up exactly the scale of the painting. I print them out. But my first step is I print them out in flipped in reverse. And I'm sure there's faster ways of doing this, but you can kind of, for people watching the video, you can kind of see behind me a little bit. There's a little drawing underneath the painting, which is not, it's actually not related to the painting at all. But that's, so I printed out flip reverse and I put some tracing paper down, and in pencil, I go over it. And then, I peel it off, put it onto the canvas, flip it over, put it on the canvas, trace back over it. So it transfers the pencil drawing. And then I print it out a second time. Again, maybe not the most efficient, but I printed out the correct way. And I have it hanging in my studio, which I'm going to, okay. Yep. You can kind of see what's going on back there for people. So again, for people who are audio only. But I printed out to scale and put it up right next to where I'm going to paint in my studio, hang it on the wall. And then I use that as reference for when I mix the colors. And I'll mix the colors on my palette and hold the brush right up to the printout and try to sort of color match it as best I can.
It's amazing. I wish I could do that. I am not equipped to do that. So I'm still actually using my computer for my reference. But I had this conversation with another artist saying like colors are not accurate because you're looking at them through the screen, which is very bright, right? So
yeah, I actually find that more surprising. That, I mean, I know a lot of artists who do that. They'll have a little like iPad or screen set up, and the couple times I've tried to do that, because sometimes you print something out and your blues look all kind of muted, and you're like, that's not the blue I kind of wanted. And so you try to look at it on your phone or on a screen, and there's light projecting behind it, and it just sort of glows, and it's like I don't know. I've tried doing the same thing where I'm holding my brush up next to my phone, which is a really great way to get paint all over your phone. But I can't color match based on the screen. Like I find it next to impossible to do that.
A couple technical questions for you. Sure. Tracing paper, do you have a favorite brand? Because you're a creature of habit, so you'll be able to tell me everything.
I don't know. I'm not when it comes to tracing paper, I just order whatever they have on Blick, to be honest. Like I'm not super fancy about it. I buy rolls of it because I use a lot of it. And it's 24 inches, which works for me. We might talk about this a little later, but I've sort of standardized set sizes of canvases that I use all the time. And they're often 20 inches on a side. So the 24-inch tracing paper is kind of perfect for that.
Got it.
Yeah, but it's just regular old tracing paper. Like it doesn't have to be super fancy.
And tell us about your, I assume, very expensive printer.
You'll be surprised to learn that my printer is kind of a piece of crap.
Is it?
Yeah, well, that's okay. Piece of crap. I'm being that's overly negative.
It's standard.
It's a standard printer. I have artist friends who live nearby. When they come over, they're always mystified at how kind of janky my printouts look next to my, and I don't know. I'm just like, it's a standard printer. It prints 8.5 by 11 standard sheets. It's not one of those, sorry, my hands. It's not one of those big ones,
Large format.
that I can print. Yeah. And I tile so 8.5, if I'm painting a 30-inch painting, I've got, like a dozen pieces of paper that come out, and I tile them all together. The one thing that makes it non-standard, it's got sort of outside things of ink that are big. So I don't need to replace the ink all that often. So the quality is not very good, but I'm not paying, thousands of dollars in printer ink every month because I'm replacing them all the time. I don't know, for whatever reason, it kind of works for me. I don't need it to be fantastic. I don't need it to be, I get really into the weeds and the details in my Photoshop mockup, but when it comes to the printout, it's mostly just there for color matching. Like I don't care that there's literally sometimes printer lines going down it because I'm low on ink or whatever.
Right. I've done that for just tracing, where I'm printing all those 8 by 11. I'm printing them using the poster function on, I guess, Adobe, but then you have to cut the little ridges because it's not full page, and then you got to take. That's a lot of work. I got to a point where I was a bit more lazy, so I started projecting. But I go, like, sometimes I want to project, so I'll project for a few months, and then I go back to tracing, and then I go back to projecting, and sometimes I just trace. But looking at your work, I think I should just be tracing, because obviously
I I first started projecting when I started doing murals, which I haven't done a lot of, so I'm not an expert. And I brought that into my studio a little bit when I've worked on some really large canvases, which is also something I don't do very often. But if I'm working on a 5-foot canvas, printing that out is going to take me forever, and it's a little bit stupid. So I've tried projecting in the studio, but maybe my projector is not that great. But it doesn't get the level of detail that I really want out of it. Like it gets very pixely kind of quick.
Yeah, I found that digital projectors are very blurry and pixelated. So here I got an old school projector with the glass and the light.
Oh, okay.
Like teachers had in the 80s. I mean, I'm old, but yeah, like those work the best. Like they really work well. But the digital ones, they're not.
Yeah.
It. All right, let's talk about the canvases. You have preferred sizes, and do you have a preferred surface? So do you work on wood panels, on stretch canvas?
Just standard stretch canvas.
Okay.
It's funny listening to your podcast. A lot of artists complain about the give on the and I actually kind of like it. I paint. You can kind of say the paintings behind me on the wall. That's actually where I paint. I paint standing up with canvases on the wall, and I put my hand right up against the canvas surface, which is part of kind of why I paint the stupid way I do, so I don't smear paint all over the place. But I like the little bit of give it gives me when I put my hand right up against it.
I'm shocked.
Really?
Yeah.
Are you? Why are you shocked? Why is that?
I just hate the bounce. It's just, I don't know. You can't put pressure on stuff, But you must be your hand must be very light when you work. Maybe that's why.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. Like I watch a lot of artists when I watch other artists do their thing, and a lot of them are, and I don't know if this is the way you work, but they have their paintbrush and they're holding it off the canvas, right? So if the canvas is here, they're holding it a distance away. I need to put my hand right flush on it, so I'm just using fingers and wrist because I need like really precision.
Right. I use my pinky. I'm a pinky person. Yeah. So if I've I'm trying to find a brush. This one's really dirty. I apologize for Trikel. I murdered this brush. But I put my hand like this, and I put my pinky like this, and then I put my pinky on the canvas, and then I paint like this. So it's giving me support and then rotation at the same time.
Interesting. Are you getting like weird pinky arthritis?
Yeah, I have joint pain. It's winter right now. It's rough.
Oh, I believe it. I believe it. Yeah. No, so I don't know. I'm probably making an argument for why I should be using panel as opposed to canvas, but I put my hand right on the surface. It gives a little bit, but then the give is already there. So as I move it around, it's not bouncing in and out.
Yeah. So I assume it's just cotton canvas, traditional canvas, right?
Yep.
Do you have canvas? Do you have a preferred brand?
Yeah, this is why I don't give away my secrets too much. I order Dick Blick brand.
That's all right.
Is that okay? Like it's not the cheap stuff, but it's I like them. They come stretched. They're great. They come gessoed, but I don't trust that they're well gessoed. So I actually put, and this is just me being paranoid and whatever, but I actually even though it's already gessoed, I put down 5 extra coats of gesso on it.
I think it's not being paranoid. I think most artists re-gesso their gessoed canvases. I do 2 or 3, usually 3 coats of gesso on top of it.
I've been around long enough that, I mean, I'm not ancient, but I've been around long enough that, like the paintings that are hanging in my parents' house that I made 20 years ago or whatever, I can take them off the wall and look at the back and be like, oh, that's kind of bleeding through. I should have, gessoed. So, so I don't know. I'm just a little overcautious about that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I had an experience before where I thought the painting was fine. And then when I varnished it, I saw some unevenness in the back, like almost blotches. And I'm like, oh no, that's probably the oil that seeped through. And then when I varnished, it just kind of made it darker. So I'm really careful now to gesso again. Do you sand in between each gesso layer?
I don't sand in between. So like I said, I put on 5 coats, and then the last coat I use a normal brush for each coat, and the last coat I use like an IKEA brand squeegee, like a shower squeegee, like one of those little flat, and so it provides like a slightly flatter surface. And then after that coat, I let that dry, and then I do sanding, but I don't sand in between the coats.
Yeah, I use it's just a fancy squeegee, but Trikel Art Supplies has a silicone wedge. It's kind of like a brush handle, but with a silicone wedge. And I use that so I don't have paintbrushes. But yeah, same concept as a squeegee. I think that's the best way to do it.
Yeah.
Do you ever use colored grounds or underpainting, or you do everything on white?
I think this is where I start going. Like all the artists are like, I'm with you, Scott," and then I'm like, I'm going this way now. Having some artists who come and visit my studio, artists who've watched the videos of me painting, and then now listening to your podcast a few episodes. I just own white, never another color. Put the pencil down, and then I do absolutely no underpainting whatsoever, and I just paint straight onto white, which is probably terrible advice for anybody who wants to try painting, since I don't know anybody else who really does it that way. I mean, I was joking that I was a little inefficient in earlier, but in a lot of ways, my studio process is geared towards maximum efficiency. And I find that, if I underpaint and then I have to sit and let it dry for a couple weeks, like I don't know, I'm just twiddling my thumbs doing other stuff. I don't mind having a white ground. I just cover it entirely with paint, and that's it. I don't really need underpainting.
It's amazing. And you are efficient because you do produce a lot. People say that I'm prolific, but you're up there. Yeah, it's very impressive.
Thanks. Well, I try to work pretty quickly. Like I said, I try to be efficient. When it comes to actual painting, I try to be fast and I try to be efficient. And part of that is just kind of the way I paint. I try not to cut corners, but I try to be fast.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Yeah, and part of it is because that's just sort of my method, is to paint fast. I think everybody gets to a point where they're kind of sick of what they're working on. You get to the point where you're like, oh my God, I gotta go back in and do all these details, and I just want this painting to be done. Because I work kind of fast, because I don't need to go back into it again and again and again, and I'm not like layering things 1,000 times. Just as I'm starting to get sick of a painting, it's like 99% done. And then I'm like, oh, I'm done. And then I just, next painting on. And so I kind of don't usually have that feeling where I kind of hate the thing I'm working on, which is helpful for me. And I also think to a certain degree that kind of shows in the paintings that I'm not like hating them as I'm working on them.
Right. Are you working on more than one pieces at a time, or only one at a time?
Nope. This is again where I'm over here and everyone else is over here. I almost exclusively work on one painting.
Yeah. No, you're not weird. I'm like that.
No, is that not weird? Okay.
No, you're good. You're good on that one.
Okay, I'm happy to not be weird on that account.
Yeah. Okay. So we should point out that we talked on social media. I think it was last month, because someone said that the way you painted was weird, and by section, which is working by section by section. And right away I commented, I'm like, that's how I work as well. People can see.
Oh, there you go.
See, it's like one section at a time. So I just want to say, you're not weird on that. I approve this method. So
fantastic. Well, then it's the two of us against the people who are calling us weird. We'll fight back against the people who are calling us weird.
I think we're right. The world is
I think
wrong.
So too. Yes. I agree. Totally agree.
What do you wear while you work in the studio?
Oh, what do I wear? I mean, I'm mostly wearing it now. You can't see from the waist down here. Just like ratty old jeans that are covered in paint. Just I don't know, just nothing terrible. Just old shirts. Nothing. I don't have like I guess I do have a uniform, but it's not anything specific. The only thing is years ago I used to paint just wearing like old Converse All-Stars or something with like no support. And I reached a certain age where I'm like, I need to be wearing comfortable sneakers because I stand while I paint. So I need to be wearing comfortable sneakers.
That's very interesting. I never thought of that. But your shoes, like it does change how you work when you're in pain or not, right?
Oh, sure. Absolutely. Yeah.
I'm asking because, some people are very specific about what they wear. They wear a specific like apron every time. I have a bunch of overalls. Like once I bought 10 overalls and I keep them in the studio. So if I just come in the studio, my studio is in my home. So if I just come in the studio really quickly, like after dinner, like I just pick a pair of overalls and I put it over whatever I'm wearing. I still have paint on all my clothes though, but
I mostly keep the paint off the good clothes, and the paint stays on the bad clothes.
I always have good intentions. I'm like, you know what? I'm just gonna do a 5-minute touch up on this. I know I'm not gonna get dirty. Pretty sure all my clothes have at least a little dab of paint somewhere on them. What brand of paint do you use?
Mostly Gamblin, like 80% Gamblin, with a little bit of Winsor Newton mixed in there, just on very specific colors. Like I have like a really set palette. Like 90% of my paintings are just like 5 or 6 colors that I use over and over and over again. I'm not one of those artists.
Are you willing to reveal what those 5 colors
are?
Oh,
sure. If I can remember, let's see. Titanium white, cadmium yellow pale, alizarin crimson, cerulean blue hue. That's the one I need to order from Winsor Newton because I don't like the other kinds. Ultramarine blue. That's the 5 I use like mostly. There's is it like ivory black? There's a black that I use a little bit just when I need some dark tones. And then once in a blue moon, if I need like a purple or something, I can't mix purple out of those things. So I have like a bright purple. I have a bright green. I have some other bright colors, but I use those pretty sparingly.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. You can't really mix purple. Purple needs to be its own pigment. I feel the same way. I sometimes do a really dull purple by mixing colors, but if you want a bright purple, you need its own pigment. Do you pre-mix your colors on your palette or as you're prepping for your session, or do you mix as you go?
No. I pre-mix everything. I'll take, anywhere between 30 minutes to an hour, and I mean, sometimes it might take an hour and a half, but yeah, no, I mix everything ahead of time. Cause I've got the printouts there. So I mix it all. Cause once I start painting, I kind of want to be in the, like, I don't want to be thinking about that. And like, obviously sometimes I'll have to do a little mixing on the fly on my palette. But once I have all the colors down, like if I need something that's in between 2 colors, it's, it takes 5 seconds to kind of mix it together. But I like having all the colors ready to go, before each painting session.
Very interesting. Very interesting.
Is that interesting? Is that weird? Is that different? I don't know.
I find everything interesting. I'm like an art nerd. So every time that someone does something different than what I do, I find it fascinating because I love the mechanics of how your mind is working. Yeah. I always have the same colors. I always start with the same colors on my palette, and they always on the same spot on the palette. But I do have the tendency to mix as I go. Yeah, which I probably shouldn't. There's no need for mixing as I go, but yeah, I don't know. It's just.
I don't think there's any. Whatever is your preferred method of doing. Like I also have very set spots where my 5 to 7 colors go.
Right.
So for me, it's like almost unconscious. Like I need more yellow, and my hand just goes up there to grab the yellow. Like I don't really think about it.
Right, makes sense. What kind of palette do you use? Glass, wood?
This is the point where I'm kind of stupid about it. I have a wooden palette. It's really old that I love. And it's very old, and because I use the same 5 or 6 colors, it's literally turned into like stalagmites.
Oh yes, little piles.
Yeah, where the pile of titanium white it's literally like 3 inches up off the thing with all crusty and stuff like that. But when I bought this like really nice, like ergonomic one that you're supposed to hold, that it fits like right in your arm. And it's designed for like, so that your arm doesn't get sore. Cause when I bought it, I was still holding my palette while I painted. But that was right around the time I switched I left I had a day job for a long time. So I transitioned from painting like 2 hours a day to painting like 8 to 10 hours a day. And painting 8 to 10 hours a day, holding a palette was, I was getting like arm numbness and stuff like it wasn't practical anymore. So I still have this like palette that's designed to be held ergonomically, but it's just frozen in place on top of my like painting table now.
Oh, wow. So do you drag your table? Like, is it one of those little thing on wheel and you just kind of...
It is on wheels, but it does. I never move it. It's sort of there. right next to where I paint. It doesn't need to move around too much.
Brushes. Tell me everything about your brushes.
Well, you've caught me in an awkward state because, I used to buy, I had a type of brush that I absolutely loved. It was, I just ordered it through Blick, like not super fancy. I don't know if it was an in-house brand. I think you could get them elsewhere, but they sold them a lot. It was called Robert Simmons was the name of the brand. You can still find them around, but they have a whole bunch of different types. And they make this like really small brush. It was like an 8/0 brush. And it's a synthetic white pointy tip. And I love this brush because I paint really thin. I mix a lot of oil in my paint. And so it's almost like the thickness of like a marker.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Like a fine tip marker. And so like, if I just sort of use it lightly, it's just like filling in with a marker. But if I press on it a little bit, as you know, the bristles spread out and I can actually fill in. And it was the perfect size to do like super tight detail, but also filling things in. And I would use that like for 90% of my painting, even like larger painting. If I painted some sky, I'd get a bigger flat brush and paint in the sky.
Right.
But almost everything I use the same brush, and I would order like 30 of them at a time. And just the second, and I would grind the can I swear?
Yeah, of course.
I grind the shit out of these brushes, right? Like, and so like, they'd start, they'd fray all over the place. It would be down to like 2 hairs. And the second it started pissing me off, I just throw it out and pull out a new one. Like I just wouldn't even bother with a brush that was giving me any sass whatsoever. Just new brush. And like about 5 months ago, they just discontinued this whole line of brushes. They're just no longer around. And so I still have like 8 or 10 of them that I'm like hoarding. But I recently went on like a spirit journey through the brush world, and I bought like I don't know, like 50 different brushes that online looked kind of close to and some of them are like 5 times the size, and some of them are really crappy. And I found a few that like one's a little bit too small and one's a little bit too big, but they kind of approximate what I want to do. So I'm kind of using them, but I haven't yet found exactly the brush that I wanted.
Have you tried to reach out to the company directly?
No, I haven't.
Maybe they have a big box of leftovers in their warehouse or something.
I've looked on like eBay. I've looked on like all kinds, and I haven't been able to find, but maybe I should reach out to them and see if they have any leftovers. Yeah, it's a good idea.
Need whatever you have left.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or you can probably get some custom brushes made somewhere.
Oh, I could. That sounds a little expensive.
Yeah, I used to. So I'm very fortunate right now because I'm part of the Trekell Pro team. So I get a lot of brushes, which is amazing. But before that era, I would buy really cheap brushes sometimes on Amazon, and I would buy the classroom pack. That's how they call them. And it's like 100 little brushes. And when I'm really rough with them, I would use them a few times, and then I would just put them in the trash. It's probably bad because it's like one-time use. It's the fast fashion of brushes, but problematic. However, like when you're rough with them, you can only use them.
Yeah.
So like classroom packs on Amazon saved me for a long time.
I used to go to like a Michael's or something, like a craft store, and buy those little plastic packages of like 20 brushes in all different sizes. And it was, 20 brushes for like $10. And I didn't care that they were cheap garbage brushes. Until I realized that like, I'm often frustrated with my painting because my brushes suck. So at that point I was like, I need to stop being cheap about the brushes a little bit here.
Yeah. It's sometimes I'm in my session and I pick, 4 or 5 brushes to start my painting with. And then I get really frustrated as I'm painting, and I'm like, oh my goodness, I could just grab another one. There's like 100 brushes next to me. And it's just, you're so in the zone that for half an hour to an hour, I'm working with the wrong brush just because my brain is not computing that I can just grab another one. It's kind of funny. Do you decide which brush you're going to use before you start your painting? Like, are you saying like selecting your brushes, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or you have a big jar?
No. Again, up until recently, I literally just had the one small brush that I did almost everything with. I had like a medium-sized flat brush that I used to mix colors and would sometimes use on the canvas. And then if I needed a bigger brush, for like sky or something like that, for like a large flat area, I'd pull that out and have that handy. So I would literally just have 3 different size brushes kind of on hand. That was kind of my normal. Now, if you look over there, I've got 70 of the brushes I bought over, sort of strewn about because I decided I hated all of them, but they're still there.
Do you have a preference with short handles or long handles?
I like short handles better, but I can use the long handle ones.
Yeah.
Just because I hold them almost like a marker or a pen. And
Right.
so when you've got the long handle sticking out, it's just like it's just this extra weight that I have no need for it whatsoever.
I'm with you on that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I hold my brush pretty close, and I don't understand long handles. I'm like, what am I going to do with all this handle in my life?
Yeah, I know. It's just kind of extra wood. I don't know what to do with it.
Exactly. You talked about mixing your paint with oil. What kind of oil do you use? Use linseed, walnut?
I just use straight linseed, and I've been doing it for a long time. I think I kind of need to explore walnut a little bit because I've noticed sometimes I use a lot of linseed oil, and it does kind of yellow the color sometimes. So I want to give walnut a try and see how I like it. But
very slow drying. Yeah.
What's that?
It's slow drying walnut.
Oh, it's slow drying. Oh, that's interesting. Okay, that's actually good to know. Yeah, I really like. I mean, I guess again, I'm a creature of habit. I like that the linseed oil, I use a lot of it. And like I said, I paint really fast so that over the course of a week, my paint will only just start to dry out on my palette. And so I can usually finish a small to medium sized painting without having to remix the same colors over and over again, which I like. And then it dries, but I'm always on deadline. So I want to have it dry within like a week or 2. And so it's like right in that window where it usually stays wet just long enough and dries enough time for me to ship it out.
Which brand do you use for your linseed oil, or it doesn't matter?
That's a good question. Oh, Gamblin. There you go. I had to go look at my studio. Yeah, I just buy a big jug of Gamblin linseed oil.
That's good. I love that brand. Gamblin Gamblin has my heart. You do work fairly fast, even if I hate that. I think that's a stupid comment. It's like, you work fast. But if you don't finish a painting in one session, how do you store your palette and your brushes to keep them fresh? I am a freezer person. I put them in the freezer overnight. Do you have any other trick? What do you do?
It's funny. I only learned about freezing paint from your podcast. I had no idea that was a thing that people do. And I think my wife would murder me if I put paint in the freezer because I've already, I already kind of take over the whole house, even though I mean, I mostly work in my studio, but like, I go upstairs, I use the printer, I'm doing stuff. I'm all over the house with this stuff. If I took over the freezer and got paint all over our frozen food, I think she would literally murder me. And perhaps deservedly so. So no, I don't stick anything in the freezer. I didn't even know that was a thing. Like I said, I'm pretty fortunate in that usually the window of time I paint in, my paint stays wet enough that I don't need to preserve it at all. My palette occasionally will kind of fill up. And so what I do, if I've got colors that I've mixed that I kind of want to hold on to, I'll kind of scrape them into little blobs and like hide them in a corner of my palette, which usually preserves them for a little bit longer. They don't dry out super fast. Once in a blue moon, if I really need to save something, I'll grab a plastic cup, scrape it into a cup, put a little saran wrap over it with a rubber band, which, is not like an exact science, but it'll hold on to it for a little bit longer if I need to. But usually I try to finish up that corner of it. That's again one reason why I work in sort of sections of the painting, so that I don't need to go back in, because that used to literally drive me crazy when I have to remix the exact same blue, because you're never going to get the same blue twice, no matter what you do.
What do you do if you need to attach a section to another section? I'm asking because I do, like right now I'm done for the day and this is where I'm at. So when I come back and my paint is a little too sticky, like it's not really wet anymore. So I personally use solvent-free gel by Gamblin, and I kind of just put a little bit on the edge. So when I go back tomorrow and I kind of work over it, I still have that feeling of wet paint. So, but it seems like your paint is so wet enough that you could keep working on it, right?
Yeah, I've never tried doing that. 99% of the time my paint stays wet enough to work into it, which is why I like the method that I have. If it's kind of dried out, and then again, that's one of the reasons why I work kind of fast, because if it dries out, instead of just repainting like a tiny inch, I might need to repaint the entire thing, right? Because I'll never get just that right little bit of color. So if there's any sort of blending in there, I just need to repaint the entire stupid section. So that's usually what I do, which is maybe not the best method. But
I was going to ask, do you do that? Does that happen often, where you actually repaint a whole section?
It doesn't happen often, but when I do need to touch something up, often I'll need to redo like a whole set. If there's a lot of blending, if it's just something that's a self-contained whatever, then it's fine. But anything that's, anything that touches like the sky or something, which usually has a gradation, across the, if I mess up, or even if it's just, it requires some touch up of the sky, I'll need to just repaint the whole stupid sky, which is why I try to avoid it, because it's usually no need to do that.
Let me ask you this controversial question, and you don't have to answer if you don't want to.
Okay.
So do you varnish your work?
Is this controversial? I didn't know there was varnish controversy.
There is.
I feel like actually maybe my take on it is a little controversial, because almost every artist I know varnishes. Like varnish videos have become sort of like Instagram porn now. Like everyone's like, ooh, varnish, and they look great. Like I'm not calling out anybody. Like they do look really cool. You varnish it and everything sort of glows. This is controversial because I've never varnished anything, which is, I don't think is probably the correct tack to take. But I've heard so many weird horror stories about varnishing gone wrong. Like, I've heard so many stories about like, oh, my show is done, everything's dry, I need to ship it out. Last thing I do is just varnish, and you varnish it, and everything just, like you just like everything melts under the varnish. I've heard stories where people ship art and like it comes out of the wrapping, and the wrapping has like messed up the varnish. It just seems like, because again, I work super fast and I'm always on deadlines and I'm always shipping work out all over the place. I don't have the time to sit and wait for something to dry and varnish it. And I've heard so many stories about how that can go sideways. So I just don't do it. I just opted not to do it. And I really need to do a little more research and try it out at some point. But like, I just don't think, it just doesn't fit in with my schedule of painting, really.
Yeah. No, but you're right. It's a very risky step. I had a lot of incidents with varnish. I still varnish, but I did pretty much add everything you mentioned, where I varnish and somehow my canvas is not perfectly even, so it pulls a little bit in one section, and when it dries, there's a bit of like a bit of a residue in some kind of shape. Or even if I package with glassine paper or butcher paper, which I like to use, it can rub, and then your varnish is not even. Or it did happen before where I said, like, I think my ground was not solid enough, and then some of the kind of varnish kind of seeped through. I have all of that happen to me, and I still varnish, but it's scary. How do you decide, once you have a bunch of sketches and idea, how do you decide if you're gonna produce it on a small scale or larger scale type canvas?
That's a good question. So like I said, I tend to work in the same sizes like often. And I've got reasons for that, largely related to shipping. So when I come up with an idea, usually in my head, I'm like, is this a small painting idea? Is this a medium painting idea, or a larger painting idea? And usually it's pretty easy to kind of determine. It's like, if I feel like really strongly, like this is going to be like, like this is going to be one of the banner pieces in the show, I'll go bigger. Right. Or if it's just an idea that like has a lot of, is really rich, and I kind of want to explore a bigger canvas. If I feel like it's a pretty good idea, but I don't need a ton of space, let's go medium. If it's an idea that, I think would function better on a smaller scale, doesn't necessarily have a lot of detail, then I just pick out a smaller canvas. So like usually it's not too hard. But you know, when I'm mocking it up in Photoshop, I've got all these templates set up, and so if it's just not quite working in my usual medium format, I'll slide it over to the larger format and see if it looks a little better, right?
Oh, that's interesting. So you got templates on Photoshop with your sizes as a preset?
Yeah, I mean, again, it's pretty simple. Like I tend to work in the same 3 or 4 sizes, so it's pretty easy to just open a new file that's, you know, whatever, it's 20 by 30 as opposed to 16 by 20, which sounds kind of the same, but you know, one of them is a little more vertical.
Right.
So it's pretty easy for me to slide things over if I feel like it's not quite working in one size or the other.
Interesting. So what are your standard sizes now that, you know, I can ask now?
Yeah. 10 by 10 for small, 10 inches by 10 inches.
Oh, that's so small.
Yeah. Well, okay. So I like always having an array of sizes each time I do a show. Because I want there to be some like more affordable pieces in there every time I do a show. I find that to be good practice sales wise. So 10 by 10, and it's also, you know what, 10 by 10s go a lot faster. So it's, you know, if I got to bang out 20 paintings, sometimes just knocking out a few 10 by 10s feels pretty good.
Yep. I agree.
So 10 by 10s, small ones, 16 by 20, medium size, 20 by 20 or 20 by 30, slightly larger. And that's kind of usually my standard if I'm shipping work. And I do that because almost everything's in a 10-inch increment. So they all tile together Tetris style into a box and I can ship them all out. Yeah, right.
I'll pick your brain. I'll pick your brain about that in a.
Yeah, we're gonna circle back to that as I got. But and then if I'm doing a show that needs like a bigger work, they want some, and then I'll go up to 30 by 40, also increments of 10. Or you know, like in a once in a blue moon, if I'm doing something for like a really big wall, I'll go up to like 60 by 40, which is the same dimensions as 20 by 30, a size I do all the time. It's just, you know, twice as large.
I feel like I was able to work really small before. And now I'm becoming one of those artists that I just want to go bigger and bigger and bigger. And I don't know. I feel like I can pack more in there. And then when I have to go back small, it's so hard to like pack details in there.
I'm not one of those artists that loves going like super huge. I mean, I like the end result of it, but it's usually I like being able to work fast, and bigger paintings obviously take longer.
Because you need bigger brushes.
Yeah, you're right. I need bigger brushes. That's true. That's a fair point. But I also like my studio here. Again, I work on the wall, and my ceilings aren't super high in here. So like when I do a 60-inch painting, it's 5 feet. You know, the bottom of the painting, I'm basically painting on my knees, hands and knees, which I don't. You know, neither I nor my knees loves that.
Yeah, I think that's fair to the knees. That's interesting as well. How the physicality of the painting actually affect the sizing. It's always the whole chicken before the egg questions.
Sure.
What kind of light do you have set up in your studio? Are you particular with the light? Do you need daylight to work?
I am particular, but it's not great. Like I get pretty much zero daylight in here, which is okay. Like I don't need the daylight for painting. I kind of need the daylight for my sense that I'm not in a basement. Like just, you know, my own emotional well-being is better with a little bit of daylight, but I like having steady, constant light that doesn't change in the studio. So I've got just like pretty normal overhead recessed lighting in here. It's just super standard stuff. And then I have up ahead, they're not on right now, but I have these little pointy lights that are small halogens that I turn on. And they make everything a little bit yellow in my studio. So the color is not fantastic, but it just shines a light. I have one pointed right on my palette, one pointed kind of at like the wall where my printout is, and then one at the painting, just so I can have pretty clear, steady light. And it's not the greatest light, but I've been working under it for, you know, decades at this point. So I'm very used to it.
Yeah. And I think the fact that you also print your references, I actually think that probably helped with the light situation, because you see your reference and your painting under the same light. As per when I'm looking at my reference on my computer, I actually hate when the light is yellowish, and I have a couple like cool lights here that I'll set up so it cools down the lighting in my studio, so I feel like it matches my screen better. But if you see your reference on paper and you're painting with the same lighting, that'll be a really good way to get the same, I don't know, see the same color. That's what I mean, right?
Yeah. No,
Yeah,
you're right, because it's consistent lighting I think as
that's
long
what.
as the lighting is consistent all around, you're fine. When you start looking at things under different lighting, you just, I don't know. It just kind of messes with your eyes and your head.
What is your process for hanging hardware?
Hanging hardware.
Mhm.
That's a good question. So I really like working on canvas because it's just, I get the canvas. I mean, I do gesso it and all, but like literally I just hang it on some nails in my studio and it's ready to go. Like it just requires no effort whatsoever. Um, and for years I would just send it off to galleries like that. Because you don't really need it. You don't really need anything back there. But then I've had a couple galleries that are like, please wire your paintings. We need
Mhm.
hangs. So I'm like, okay, that's fine. And then I once had a very particular collector reach out to me, and he was like, I really love your work, but like, I'm a little annoyed that you didn't wire your paintings. And at first I was like, okay, whatever. But then I thought about it. I was like, no, he's spending thousands of dollars. Like, he's probably right. So now even though you don't really need the wire, I just, I order off of Amazon. I know Amazon's not great, but I just buy like a ton of wire, a ton of little, what is it, O-rings or D-rings.
Yeah.
And just at the end of when I have a whole body of work done and it's all dry, I'll just, screw them into the back of all of them, just so they're ready to hang.
Yeah, it's very time consuming.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
that's why I kind of avoided it. I was like, do I need to do this? This doesn't feel like it should be my job, but then it's not anybody else's job, so it is my job. And
Do you,
it's, it'll take like a few hours at the end. It's not the worst thing in the world. It's just a little
yeah.
annoying.
Do you know what I started doing? This is, I don't know if I should reveal this publicly. So, hanging hardware, the wire and all the stuff, and it's such a pain. So what I started doing is actually what they call, like, I think they called saw hooks, but those little thing with the
Yep.
little,
Mm-hmm.
what I'm talking about? It's just
Oh
kind
yeah,
of
yeah.
metal with little teeth on it.
Mm-hmm.
I think they're called saw hooks, but I could be
Mm-hmm.
wrong.
Mm-hmm.
I get heavy duty one,
Oh.
2 each side at the top.
Mm-hmm.
It's thin. It
Mm-hmm.
takes like 5 seconds. Boom, 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 boom. Ready to hang. And I don't have to.
That's a pretty good idea. I like that idea.
So it's ready to hang,
Mm-hmm.
and it's more affordable.
Mm-hmm.
And it's also, I find sometimes with the wiring, depending if you put it inside the canvas, but depending on the situation, like, it can kind of stick out. And I don't like it when it's shipping and all this stuff. I
Yeah.
feel with the little hooks, they're pretty flat still on the painting. I really like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the thing. I like putting the O-rings on the inside of the canvas so that it's
Mhm, mhm.
so it can hang flush. And not every canvas you like, if there's crossbars on the back or sometimes you
Right.
can't do that. And so it bothers my sense of like everything needs to be perfect when like the wire is like sticking off the wall, and I don't know, it just bothers me. I don't know. I
Yeah.
let it get to me too much.
If you do the
Mm-hmm.
saw hooks, or whatever how they're called,
Mm-hmm.
the good thing as well is you don't have to make sure they're even on each side, because you just put them at the top.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because hang your hand work anyway. That's what I do. But I don't know if, like, someone's gonna see this and be like, "Oh, how dare she do this?" Do you sign your work the same way every time?
I do. I sign it and I sign it in like the dumbest possible way. And I don't know why I do this, but I started doing it, and now I've been doing it for too long. So I sign it on the back, in marker. And I don't sign my name. I print my name so that you can actually read it. And then I date it. I have so it's my name, and then I shouldn't say this because then people are going to counterfeit my work. I'm kidding, sort of. That's it. But no, actually, I recently had somebody reach out to me and said, I don't know if this is an original painting of yours or if it's a reproduction. And I said,
Oh,
take a photo of the back. And he sent me the photo. And I'm like, no, that's real, because I only sign the real paintings. Just spell out my name
certainly.
and the date. And the reason it's actually fine, but the reason it's stupid is when I sign prints, I don't sign them like that at all. I sign with my name in cursive in pencil. Totally different style. Why do I do this? I don't know. It's just the way I've been doing it forever.
Yeah, I think that's fine. I also have a different print signature than my original signature. Yeah. When I sign my painting, it's like Alex Garant under it. So Alex on top, Garant is under. When I sign my print, it's all vertical. I don't know.
Do you sign the front of the painting or the back of the painting?
The front. I like my name there.
Sure.
I'll tell you why. The reason why I sign my name at the front is I own a bunch of originals here from, not myself, from other artists, because I like to collect art myself. And a lot of them are not signed at the front. And okay, shame on me once again. Shame on me. There's a couple paints. I have a lot of art.
Yeah.
There's a few of them I'm like, oh man, I don't remember who painted this.
Sure. I think
because there's a few paintings that are that I acquired just going to a random art show and not knowing the artist, and just be like, oh, love this, buying it. And there's no signature, and some of them are not signed at the back.
Oh, that's a problem.
And then I'm like, what was the name of this guy? And now I have to try to go on the gallery website where I got it, find the show to kind of remember. So I do like when people sign at the front. So if somehow I have to talk about the art that I own, I can pretend I know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. That's a good point.
But I don't know. I'm pretty sure if people acquire your pieces, they'll know it's yours. So I don't think you have this problem. Know. Let's talk about shipping.
Yes, let's talk about shipping.
Yes. So you got a little humble brag that you were an expert shipper.
I don't think that's exactly the way I phrased it. I think the way I phrased it is I've made a lot of shipping boxes despite being not handy at all otherwise.
All right. So I kind of want to know everything. So what are your shipping material? You crate your work. So that's also good. Do you crate when it's a solo show or just when it's a one piece? And so tell us your packaging layers.
Okay. So I lived for a long time in Boston and showed my work. When my art career started going places, I was showing my work everywhere except Boston. So I was regularly shipping my work everywhere. Like I never got the chance to just drive my, put everything in the hatchback and drive down the street. So I was shipping work out all the time. And I had a friend of mine, his name is Jason Chase, who I don't know where he learned this from, but he learned this like super quick and dirty way to build a shipping box. I don't know if it's like a crate so much as it's a box. It's just a literally wooden box. It's the quickest, dirtiest, easiest way you can make a box. And he taught me how to do this, and I started doing it. And I've modified the design like a tiny bit over the years, but it's still basically the same thing. And so this is kind of what I learned to do. And I always erred on the side of, yes, it's going to cost me more to go buy wood, and yes, it's going to take some time for me to build the box. But I don't need to worry about it in transit. For me, it was kind of worth that. Like I've heard, again, talking about, varnish earlier, I heard so many horror stories about, forklifts going through paintings, and, somebody's painting showed up. It looked like a sword had gone through them. I just all kinds of things. Yeah. So I'll do my best to kind of explain quickly how I build the boxes. I've been thinking about making like a YouTube video of it at some point, just so people kind of know it and it's out there, but I haven't had a chance to do that.
Educate me, put me through the steps. So let's say I'm calling you and I'm like, Scott, got to ship this painting.
Yes.
Got a painting in my hand. What's step one?
Okay. Step one is go back in time and make the painting the correct size. Okay. I mentioned sizes earlier. So the wood I buy, it's the sides of it are just 2x4s, planks of wood. And by 2x4, I actually mean 2x4 or 2x6 or 2x8 or 2x10 or but it's the thick planks of wood. That wraps around the sides of these things. The two faces are thin sheets of plywood. Okay. And the plywood, I go to Home Depot. The plywood either comes in 2x4 foot sheets or 4x8 foot sheets. Okay.
Got it.
A 4x8 foot sheet is a big honking thing and is not going to fit in my tiny car. So there are saws that you can get these things cut at Home Depot. Okay. Just FYI. However, it's easier if you can get the 2x4 foot ones. Again, the 2x4 foot is kind of key here. A 2 foot, 24-inch piece of plywood a 20-inch painting, which I mentioned previously, I paint a lot in these 20, fits perfectly with padding in a 24-inch piece of plywood.
Okay.
So that is, again, why I often paint in these sort of set sizes, so I can tile them together and they fit in these boxes. So I've been doing this for years. I've shipped probably over 100 of these boxes. So at any rate, it doesn't always work out perfectly. But so you say you've got, 4 20-inch wide paintings that you're going to tile together into a box. I used to do a little napkin sketch. Now I sort of mock it up in Illustrator, but I mock up like how I'm going to tile these together, what size wood I need to get.
Wait. Let's go back.
Yeah.
You make an Illustrator sketch of how you're going to package your painting?
Yeah.
Well, that my mind is.
Well, this example, I had 4 paintings, but like, okay, say you're shipping 18 paintings to Australia.
Yeah.
How big is your box going to be? Well, that takes some math, right?
Yeah. I mean, we both show at Bain Art Gallery, and we ship stuff a lot. I just buy big boxes and Tetris it. Just, we'll do. Kind of, that's how I do it.
Do you feel confident they're all going to fit in the box before you buy the box? Because I don't.
No, then I just get more boxes.
Oh, okay. Well, that's okay. That's the way to go. Okay. I do not. I try to get them all to fit in one box. So at any rate, I determine how wide the box needs to be, how long it needs to be, based on the number of paintings I have. I do my little napkin sketch. I figure it all out. I go to Home Depot. If I'm lucky and I don't need a huge box, I'll buy the 2x4 foot panels, 2 of them, one for each side. If I can, I'll get them cut at Home Depot, so I don't have to do it at home. Doesn't always work out that way. I have a saw at home I can use. And then I also get the 2x4. And if it's just one painting, a 2x4-inch plank, works fine. If I need to stack, 3, 4, 5, 6 layers of paintings, and all my paintings they're all 1.5-inch thick. So I can do the math, figure out what size boards I need. I'm sorry, this is really complicated. I'm losing everybody. Everyone already is like, I'm out.
No, you're good. I'll put some illustration. Everybody's going to be very entertained.
Okay, maybe I'll send you some pictures of what the boxes look like in progress.
That'd be amazing. All right, 2x4, then you 2x4, but 2x4 you mean 2 feet by 4 feet.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes.
So ideally, you've got the math all worked out. If you're lucky, you can get that all cut at Home Depot, so you don't have to do it at home. Sometimes I bring it back and I need to saw it in my garage. That's fine. I also get this this styrofoam padding, which is super not environmentally friendly. I apologize. That's also 1.5 inches thick.
Okay. Where do you get this?
Also at Home Depot. It's all at Home Depot. And that comes in sheets that are probably like a foot by maybe 4 feet, something like that.
Are you talking about soft foam, or are you talking about the foam that's like a bunch of white little dot bubbles?
Yeah. The hard, it's sort of like the semi-squishy white styrofoam. Yeah.
Yes.
It comes in these sheets that are 1.5 inches thick. It's insulation stuff. It's 1.5 inches thick. It's a foot by 4 feet is a sheet. So I buy, and you can buy packets of them, like 6 of them. So I buy all that stuff. I buy nails. I bring that all home. I build the outside of the box. And then the things that I've added onto this is I add little metal brackets on the end, just so it doesn't like splinter and fall apart. So that keeps it like really, really steady. And then I line the inside with the styrofoam. So there's 1.5 inches of thick styrofoam in between anything and a painting, right? On all sides. So there's wood, a layer of wood, and then 1.5 inches of styrofoam. And if I've done my math correctly, all my shit tiles in there with like minimal room to like move around. So I wedge it in there, and if there is a little bit of room, I put in some more styrofoam so it doesn't jostle at all.
Do you package the painting in glassine paper or butcher paper or anything?
That's a good point. I buy painter's plastic.
Okay.
These long sheets of plastic. And so you're right. I wrap every painting in that first.
Okay. Note for people that will be watching this: if you do varnish your work, do not use plastic directly on the varnished painting.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. That's a bad idea. Yeah. That's another reason why I don't varnish.
We'll put a disclaimer at the bottom so you don't get sued for your advice.
Yes, please, nobody sue me. This is free advice that may or may not work for your purposes.
Yes. Okay, but that's genius so far.
Yeah. So everything's wrapped in plastic. I've got an open box that's filled with styrofoam all around. the paintings all go inside. I tile up. I put another styrofoam on top, so it's totally sealed off. And then I put the last bit of plywood on top. Everything is screwed in with a screw, a drill.
Yeah.
Right. It's not fancy. Like there's no like hit. You can't just sort of like flip open a thing and the thing opens up. You need the other people on the other end need a drill to get the thing out. It's all locked in there. And then the last step, this is again my part of it. I add 2 little handles in the top, 1 or 2, depending on how big it is. If it's a small thing, it looks like a little wooden suitcase. If it's a big thing, it's got 2 handles on the top, so I can lift it up and move it around. And they do get kind of.
So you buy bulk handles?
Yeah. Well, I buy like you go to again, if you go to Home Depot, there's a little hardware. You go down the hardware aisle, and they've got just little metal handles that are pretty cheap that screw on. They're like drawer pulls, but they're not not attractive. They're just kind of, you know.
That's cute though. I love it.
This is complicated, and I know it sounds like a lot, but I'm not a handy person. Like I can't build anything else. You want me to do any sort of stuff around the house? I'm not your guy. But I've just built a lot of these things, and I've gotten, I guess, pretty good at it. To the point where, like, again, okay, I'm gonna humble brag a little bit here.
Go for it.
One of the really early in my career, I sold a painting to a guy, and I built him a box to ship this painting in, and I shipped the painting. And this is years and years and years ago. And then I heard from him like a full decade later, and he said, I hope you don't, he reached out to me, said, Scott, I hope you don't take this the wrong way, because I really like your painting. It still hangs, I still have it hanging up in my house. But what I really love is your shipping box. He said, I've moved like 6 times. The thing is still in great shape. I throw everything in there. You can toss it in a truck. Like nothing happens to it. It's just, and I was actually like, honestly, like really, like, I was like really proud of my handicraft there, because I'm not much of a handy guy, but these boxes they're not that hard to make. It is expensive to ship them compared to like cardboard.
That was my question. I wrote down a question.
Yeah.
But first, let's just finish this. I think that's great, because I think it's added value as a collector, right? You buy a premium, buying art is a premium product, so luxury, right? So it's great that it comes also in a luxurious packaging.
Yeah, I mean, it's not that luxurious. It's got splinters hanging off the side of it, but
no, but I mean, like, I ship stuff in a cardboard box, so it's like, you know.
If I'm just shipping one kind of small painting somewhere to like a gallery for like a group show, I'll use a cardboard box, because it's not worth building a custom crate for it.
So how much does it cost you to build the box, and how much more is like shipping? Because shipping, we ship a lot to Australia, you and I, which is great. That must be, you know, it's heavy. Heavy is pricey.
Yeah, shipping internationally is a whole different animal. That is, I hate. I mean, everyone hates dealing with international shipping. I live in the U.S., and most of the time I just ship my work here. Although, you know, nowadays I ship it, I guess, all over the world. But if you're talking purely domestic shipping, you know, it used to be, it was pretty easy to go to Home Depot for, it depends on the size of the box you're building, but for, you know, like $100 to $150, you could get the materials. I usually wouldn't charge for the time it takes me to build the box, which is, maybe I should have, but I was like, it's free with charge, whatever. And then shipping it. So I would ship it FedEx ground, which is the cheapest way to ship things. And I think it literally just involves them grabbing the box and like heaving it into a truck. And because I build these things, they're literally built like a tank. So I don't care if they're just like, they can stack 1,000 things on top of it. As long as they're not ramming it with a forklift, it's fine. And so like, I wouldn't care that it would take, you know, a week to get there. I would just pay for the cheapest way for it to ship. That was back in the day. You know, in the last few years, everything's become a lot more expensive. Gas prices and the price of wood and everything have gone up. So that it now costs probably, I don't know, almost twice what it used to ship stuff that way. So I'm a little bit, that's why I've started using cardboard a little bit more for smaller things.
I use Pirate Ship for shipping, and I feel like I save a lot of money. It's just like a third-party company that, you know, they give you the rates for all the shipping companies, and I feel like that way at least I'm cutting some of the actual shipping cost. But yeah, when you ship a solo show, it's pricey.
Yeah, it's expensive, and sometimes it's unpredictable. Like I know for a fact when I ship things domestically, there's like certain threshold. If I keep the box under a certain size, it's not that much, but literally I can make it like 5 inches bigger and all of a sudden it costs twice as much because it's cleared some threshold. And same thing with weight. Like if it's 40 pounds, if it's 50 pounds, if it's 60 pounds, it's fine. All of a sudden you get up to like 80 pounds and it costs twice as much. It's very annoying.
Yeah.
A lot of times you can kind of scope that out online and try to figure out what the best method is. But when it comes to international, sometimes it's like, if I pack this in cardboard, it weighs 20 pounds and it'll cost $1,000 to ship. If I pack this in wood, it'll weigh 100 pounds and it'll cost $1,050, like 15. It only costs like a little bit more to ship. So it's like, well, okay, that's silly and stupid.
Yeah, that's worth just doing the right thing.
Yeah.
Well, you got me inspired to start building crates, especially for my collectors. I think if I ship something directly to a collector, I do want to have a fancier packaging, or more like sturdy, so it just feels like quality is in the packaging as well.
It's robust. It's not fancy. That like
yes, no, that's I say it's fancy because it's still a homemade crate.
No, I've had collectors and I've had galleries compliment me on the boxes I've built.
Do you have any other projects coming up outside of your regular art practice, like painting and stuff like that?
Yeah, actually, I have a couple things I'm working on, but the big one is I'm working on a second book project. I had a book that came out, it was like 6 years ago now, I think, and it was a small limited edition run. And I'm working with the same publishing group to do a second book, which I haven't previously mentioned because it's one of those things like I'm scared to mention it because then maybe it'll go away. But I think it's happening. I've put some work into it, so hopefully it's happening. But it should be coming out, I think this June, to coincide with a show that I'm having with Harmon Projects in San Francisco. So fingers crossed that will happen on schedule.
Yeah, I'm sure you will. I'm sure people want it.
I hope so. I hope they want it.
I want it. If people want to find more information about the book or your upcoming shows or anything about you, where can they go?
I am super easy to find on the internet. My name is Scott Listfield. I'm the only Scott Listfield in the whole world. So if you Google me, I come up pretty easily. So on social media, I'm always at Scott Listfield. My website, weirdly enough, is astronautdinosaur.com, which is a website I snagged over 20 years ago, and I've held on to it since. Although, if you do scottlistfield.com, it also goes there. So that's easy as well, if you forget that one.
Amazing. So we know where to stalk you on your social media.
Come stalk me.
Thank you, Scott.
Thank you. This has been fun. It's nice to talk technical stuff.
I know. Thank you for hanging out. We'll talk again soon.
Yeah, sounds good. I look forward to it.
Bye.